Invite the honourable member for Edmonton St. Albert for his right of reply. The honourable member has 5 minutes.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker, and I'd like to thank all honourable members from all sides of the House who have participated in the debate regarding Private Members Bill 461. Let me start by dispelling some of the concerns from my friends from the New Democratic Party. This bill is not an attack on the CBC, and I really wish that you would assess the statute on its face rather than develop a bunch of conspiracy theories as to why we are promoting it. Section 68.1 of the current Access Act has been determined by 2 courts, including the Federal Court of Appeal, that it is unworkable. It creates an exclusion and then an exemption to an exclusion, which is a recipe for controversy and led to expensive litigation, and ultimately the Federal Court of Appeal and the Federal Trial Court agreeing with the Information Commissioner that the Information Commissioner must be able to see the documents in order to determine whether or not disclosure is appropriate. Now, I listened intently to my friend from Halifax, who did actually, I think, read the bill before she spoke. And she was curious as to why an exclusion is not the best way to protect the independent broadcaster. And the reason is quite clear. It's Section 36 of the Access to Information Act, which sets out the powers of the Information Commissioner. And they are broad. She may summon and enforce the appearance of persons. She may receive affidavits, take evidence on oath. She can compel production to documents. It is simply, I would say, more than difficult, borderlining on impossible, to create an exclusion that can coexist with the broad powers of the Information Commissioner that are set out in Section 36. So what is the way to balance the rights and needs of an independent public broadcaster and the law that says the Information Commissioner ought to be the one to arbitrate disputes? It's the prejudice test. And I did not make up the prejudice test. The prejudice test was developed by was cited by the Information Commissioner before the Access and Ethics Committee when she testified when they did a study of 68.1. 68.1 is so flawed that a standing committee of Parliament did an entire study on it. And the Information Commissioner recommended a prejudice test, that if you can show that the release of the documents is going to be injurious to your independence, then disclosure is inappropriate. Now, I was very interested to hear the comments of the member from Winnipeg Centre, and he talked about what Cabinet would think about this bill if it came to committee. And then we heard from the Parliamentary Secretary, the Minister of Justice, and we heard that the government is going to propose amendments to this bill. They do not want to disclose the salaries of DM 1, 2, 3, and 4, or the comparable salaries of any other government appointments. So if I were members of the opposition, I would think very seriously as to why the government is going to propose amendments to this bill to exclude all income levels under and less than the DM4 level. Now, with respect to this bill, and my friend from New Brunswick, I think, had the most sage speech. He, as many of you know, was the former director of the Canadian Taxpayers Federation and understands very well that the concepts of transparency and openness are fundamental to democracy. We in this chamber are members of Parliament. Our job is to hold the government to account. That is the departments, that is the agencies, and the Crown corporations. We cannot hold government to account when government institutions withhold information from us or from other agencies or from other Canadians that are requesting them. Knowledge is power, and the only way that you can get knowledge is if you have access to the information. And the last thing that I want to say, Mr. Speaker, is this is far from an attack on the Canadian Broadcasting Corporation. The salary disclosure requirements of this bill are to be applied in the entire federal public service. CBC is in no way being singled out, and transparency is not the enemy of a public institution. Far from it. Transparency leads to trust. Trust that there is proper stewardship over public resources. CBC should want to disclose, they should want this legislation so that Canadians can once again have the trust that they are the proper stewards over public resources. I encourage all members to support Bill 461 and in an unamended form when it goes to committee. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
It being 7:04, the time provided for debate has expired. Accordingly, the question is as follows. Mr. Rathgeber, seconded by Mr. Williamson, moved that Bill C-461, an act to amend the Access to Information Act and the Privacy Act, Disclosure of Information, be now read a second time and referred to the Standing Committee on Access to Information, Privacy and Ethics. Is it the pleasure of the House to adopt the motion? All those in favor of the motion will please say yea. Yea! All those opposed will please say nay. Nay! In my opinion, the nays have it.